So welcome to History Pub. Yes. So I'm Debbie Monsiv. I'm the president of the Cottage Grove Genealogical Society, and I help coordinate the History Pub. As you all probably know, we're in a historic building on our historic Main Street. This building was built in 1908. There was another brick building in this footprint before. I want to thank Jim Lockhart for capturing it all on video, and this video will be up on the Cottage Grove Partners in History in about a week, 2 weeks sometimes, and so I try to post it on Facebook when it's up. I want to thank Dana Meriday. He's our publicity person and he does a fantastic job. Heather Endicott is volunteered and is making our quarterly posters, so I want to thank her as well. And the Cottage Grove Partners in History for 2025 and 6 are the Cottage Grove Historical Museum, the Cottage Grove Genealogical Society, the Cottage Grove Historical Society, the Cottage Grove Aviation Historical Society and Museum, the Spirit of Bohemia Mining Days, Spirit of BMD for short, and Singing Creek Educational Center. And if you're interested in learning more about Cottage Grove history and its people, you can volunteer at one or more of these partners in history. Everybody is always looking for volunteers, and the Cottage Grove Genealogical Society has a volunteer opportunity that you can do from home. So if you have keyboarding skills and you want to learn history while you're doing a indexing job, talk to me. And I just want to promote something the Genealogical Society's been working on for about 9 months. We've been working on identifying and documenting all of the young men and women that went off to World War II and served our country. And in doing that, we discovered 56 young men who gave their all. And that's in a 30-square mile area from Diston to Lorraine, Creswell to Yoncalla. And I've made posters for every one of these young men, and they're hanging in the hallway at the community center, and we're calling it the Honor Gallery. And a week from tomorrow, we're having a military open house, and you can come and look at displays. We have 3 Rosies, original Rosies coming, and you can talk to them. And Ed Smith, who is a history buff, is going to come, and if you have any ephemera from World War II, or any war actually, he could probably help you identify it. So I hope that you all come out and walk the Honor Gallery and read these young men's stories. So with that, I want to introduce you to Steve. He was born in 1951 and grew up on the Lick Skillet Ranch in rural Louisiana and Texas. He loved to read books as a youth and often disappeared for hours into the woods with his dog and horse. Steve credits his grandmother with inspiring his love for history. He worked in railroad construction when in college, and in 1976 moved to from New Orleans to Cottage Grove to help build a planned railroad for the Cerro Gordo community that would connect the OP&E line near Row River. Yeah, Cerro Gordo was going to sell stock in the railroad. Believe it or not, it's not an Oily Olsen story. Today, Steve is recognized as one of the leading authorities on the Oregon writer Opal Whiteley. In 1994, Steve founded the Opal Whiteley Memorial in Cottage Grove to bring attention to mental health needs in our community. Opal Whiteley was a best-selling nature writer in 1921 and grew up near Cottage Grove. The University of Oregon asked him, to assist in publishing Opal Whiteley's best-selling diary online. He collected dozens of historical photographs of the people and places Opal wrote about. That branched out into many other historical projects. In addition to being a historian for over 25 years, he is on the board of the Oregon Asian Celebration, where in 2023 he was named the Man on the Moon. They even did the poster with his face on it. It was cool. Steve also serves on the boards of the Springfield Museum, Laurel Hill Cemetery and the Singing Creek Educational Center, and they are the sponsor for tonight's 50/50 raffle. So please buy your raffle tickets and support the Partners in History. And Steve, welcome.
Thank you all so much for coming tonight. And before I get to the gold in the talk, I'm going to let Matthew and Dana Maraday, and thanks very much to Dana. I pulled him in, and Matthew too, to help me sell tickets. So the tickets benefit the Partners in History, which is a wonderful collection of groups. And tonight, I'm representing both my wife Karen and I are on the board of the Singing Creek Educational Center. And right over there, Alice Christensen is a past president of Singing Creek Educational Center. And we do age-appropriate living history. And I have brochures here if you're interested in your child or your grandchild. We do great programs for kids. We're approved by the Grand Ronde tribes. And it's really, kids have a good time learning real history and age appropriate. So if y'all have any questions about that, you can ask me after the talk. But thank you all very much, and buy those raffle tickets because somebody's going to win that money. Tonight we're going to talk about one of the really legendary figures of our town, James Bohemia Sharp. And this is part of a talk that I've given, a bigger part of a talk I've given called Colorful Characters of the Bohemia Gold Mines. And he was one of about 4 colorful characters. And, you know, I'm no expert on gold mining, but I think everybody here knows I'm an expert on colorful characters. And they are always like smart visionaries. They're loners, they're hard workers, they take risks. And they're very stubborn. Very stubborn. I can think of one in particular. But they're also quaint, very quaint, as we'll see. Now, who was Bohemia Sharp, and where is his body? Because the title of the talk is, Where is the Body of Bohemia Sharp? But as I started working on it, I realized that there were many factoids in his life that we thought we knew that didn't pan out to be accurate at all. And I have Alice Christensen there to thank, who looked over my presentation and found about 25 errors. And we've got, I think, a really good history of Bohemia Sharp nailed down. And he's famous for wearing long johns. The train passed right in front of his property, and this got to be a problem for people looking out, or the train would blow the whistle and people would yell for Bohemia Sharp to come out wearing his long johns there. And so that's a picture that Alice Christensen cleaned up. Now, we've really got 2 Bohemia Sharps we're dealing with here. And we're trying to figure which is our Bohemia Sharp, because there's the story that he told is that he fled the Civil War from St. Louis, and he was going to Peru, and then he met people coming to Oregon, and they convinced him to in Panama to come up to Oregon. So he came up to Oregon, got here in 1862. Now, that's one story. There's another very, very different story that Alice turned up, and was he in the Confederate Army? Did he serve and actually get captured at Gettysburg? And was he a Civil War POW, or were there 2 James H. Sharps? Now, this is the Bradley, Tennessee census. That's where he was from. This shows him 20 years old, 1860, right there. And I'm going to go through a few slides where, who the heck was our Bohemia Sharp? Well, it's not well known that he was a vegetarian, for one thing. And he had pet deer, like Opal Whiteley did. And he refused to let anybody shoot one of his deer. In fact, one time there was a man at his house named Joe Landis, and Joe Landis took his gun out. He'd seen a deer and was about to shoot it, and then stepping up behind him comes Bohemia Sharp, sticking his gun into Joe Landis's back and assuring him that he will fire if Joe Landis kills any of his pet deer. He was sent to the poor farm in 1914 because it was believed he could not take care of himself. And, God, please keep us all from people who believe we can't take care of ourselves, because it doesn't usually work out well. And then he actually died at the Oregon State Mental Hospital. And our James H. Sharp, well, we all know Sharp's Creek was named for him. He built the first road up to the Bohemia mines, but he never got paid for it. And that haunts the rest of his life from the 1860s all the time until he's sent to the poor farm. It becomes just a millstone around his neck. But that road made other miners rich, and it made him a legend. If you want to get to be a legend, what you do is you build a road or make an easy way to get to gold. People will make you their legend. But he was like a hermit, and since I've worked in mental health for a long time, there are things about Bohemia Sharp that make me think he might be on that Asperger's scale, because he lived alone, he never married, never had a girlfriend. He had a lot of friends and acquaintances, but no real people he hung out with very much. And of course, wearing long johns in front of a train full of people is not one of the more signs of stable mental. Opal Whiteley was going to write a story about him called The Impossible Man. The old term when we used to use the word impossible, he's impossible to deal with. And she proposed, this is one of the things that she proposed to the Atlantic Monthly in Boston before the publisher told her he wanted her diary and he wanted the early parts of her diary. It's said in our history that he was a college graduate in civil engineering. He certainly knew civil engineering. Was he a college graduate? We're going to figure out. And he said his uncle invented the Sharp's rifle, and that he knew Ulysses S. Grant and John Wilkes Booth, that he had met them in St. Louis. I checked, and it's somewhat possible because before the Civil War, both Grant and John Wilkes Booth, he was on an extended theatrical event there in St. Louis, but they were both in St. Louis. Now I want to start with this 1975 scan from the 1975 Bohemia Mining Days book. And the author isn't noted. Ray Nelson is on the cover, and I'm not sure, had Ray Nelson passed away by then? I'm not sure. So anyway, it doesn't say who wrote the book, who wrote the article here. And on all my slides, I'm going to make the slideshow available to anybody. And all the slides, I always put the hyperlinks that go to the original story where I got something. I got to prove everything. So yeah, I always put hyperlinks. But this says he arrives here in 1864 and he avoided the Civil War. And it says he was briefly the postmaster of Cottage Grove. Later on, his obituary says he was the postmaster up in Eugene and Cottage Grove. And he died, it says he died in town in 1917. And the one thing it does is it goes into more detail than any other article about the road building controversy, where he built the first road up to the Bohemia gold mines, and he had a handshake agreement with Judge Fisk. Well, wouldn't you know it, Judge Fisk died a few days apparently before the road was finished, and he turned everything in. And the new judge said, there's no contract. You just had a handshake agreement with him, which in those days was usually good. In 1860s was usually good. But that second judge didn't accept it all. Bohemia Sharp might have been out as much as $1,500, which was a lot of money in 1860. Now, excuse me, one of the articles that I'm going to refer to, there are about 4 local writers who have written about Sharp over the years, but each one of them I think might have come from one newspaper article, and they kind of copied each other and carried forward what are probably errors. Because this has his story about that when they found out Fort Sumter had been fired on, he immediately bought a ticket down to going to Peru. So Ivan Hoyer has a story about him going down to Peru, and there at the Isthmus of Panama, coming north to Oregon. Now, was he a graduate of Knox College? This is such a cool college. I'd seen this name graduate from Knox College years and years reading. It's in many things. And it's one of those things you just say, yeah, graduate from Knox College, just kind of slide it over. Like a little while later, there's going to be a man in here by the name of Colonel Knight. And you just kind of slide over. And I started researching this and Knight. And Knox College, and it was founded in 1837 as an anti-slavery school, and it was active with the Underground Railroad. And Lincoln and Douglas had one of their debates there. They debated there in, I think, 1858. So if he did go to Knox College, this is maybe where he was around people. It's kind of hard we think of Bohemia Sharp as this really cantankerous, backward guy, but you dig into the stories more and you find out that many people called him highly educated. And this was a great school at the time. Well, I did phone the college yesterday and talked to a nice fellow named Jason who looked it up and said that they didn't have records for students who enrolled during this period. They had the records for the students who graduated, and Sharp is not on the list of graduates of Knox College. The man speculated, well, maybe he enrolled and then left. Like I might say, I went to LSU, okay? Now, when somebody, like when Deborah or somebody, Jim says, tells a story, when I say I went to LSU, they might say, oh, Steve graduated from LSU. Well, truth is, I got kicked out 3 times, so, and they call me an academic bankrupt. I'm still got issues with that college, so anyway, and when I'm up here on this stage, I try to do an ultra deep dive. That's why I document things so well, because I think you guys deserve real history, and it's so much fun. Or is this did our Bohemia Sharp, did he take off for Peru? Did he go through Panama and come up to Oregon that way? Or was he in the Civil War? Was he a Confederate prisoner from the 43rd Mississippi Infantry? Alice found the record there, but I found that they called it the Camel Regiment. They had this real camel named Douglas, and the camel's got its own grave in some really nice cemetery for Confederate soldiers. And he was captured in, looks like, December 1864, and then not released until June 20th, 1865. And a lot of the reports say he came to Oregon in 1862. So this is where we get into, okay, which Sharp have we got? Or is there one Sharp and he's not telling the complete truth? I'm going to skip to 1884 here. This is the first time that the nickname of Bohemia Sharp comes up in the Eugene papers. So this is, 22 years if he got here in 1862, or if he got here in 1866, 18 years. So it shows less than 20 years later, he's got the moniker Bohemia Sharp. And so it shows, what people will do for you if you make it easy for them to get to gold. And I want to point out here that so much of what's in this show and so many of the other presentations you've seen here have been built on the digitized newspapers. Deborah says that there's a little blurb about digitizing the newspapers on every table. It is so important. It preserves the history. We can double check the written history, and quite often it's at variance with what is in an old newspaper. And Becky Venice there, you're still in charge of raising the money. So if you want to donate something to digitizing the newspapers, see Becky there. There's so much fun to read when you read them online. Like, I didn't print it, but in one of the articles on Bohemia Sharp, right next to it was a great big advertisement for the world's best female impersonator. And they were going to come, Eugene or Cottage Grove won, but the world's best female impersonator. And you find so many interesting articles around the thing that you're really searching for. 1924, the Sentinel runs an article on him and other colorful founders, and they say he's born in Nashville in 1840, and that he came to Oregon in 1862, went up to Bohemia Mountain in 1866, and met Bohemia Johnson up there. Would he have liked to have been at a meeting between Bohemia Johnson and the future Bohemia Sharp? They would have been two real characters. But whereas Johnson may have been something of a sleazy character, Dan Hill has done research on Johnson. He's not as sterling a figure as we might like. But Bohemia Sharp was a really good guy, quirky as hell, but very good and kind, and did a lot for the community. Now these pictures from Curtis Irish's collection, one of my mentors in history, in addition to John Wilson, and just some pictures of the mining district. And this woman right here, I wish I'd blown her up more, but that's Margie Knowles on the electric tram train up there. And this says Mr. Boneman. Now in 1895, Sharp goes to the Oregon Senate, and apparently he went up to Salem every legislative session. There's articles about him in the Salem newspapers and Cottage Grove newspapers. He went up there to lobby for the gold mines and to give an update on what's going on with the gold mines. And he appears to be a very different guy up in Salem. There you have a man who's educated, very articulate, and really makes the town. Down here we've got a hermit who wears long johns out in front of trains. Now, for y'all who too young to know long johns, they had openings in the front and back. And after you wore them for a while, those openings, they would, just kind of start getting wider and wider, and people could see you pretty well. And this is for a funny thing about Sharp, he was a civil engineer, and yet he doesn't appear to have gotten the boundaries of his own property or his own gold mine very well. And so it goes to 1895 and then maybe 1900 before he gets his homestead. And the newspaper here says he was robbed by legislators from Portland, which, believable if that happens. You know that, don't you, Mayor? Yeah, the Portland folks like to run places. And it says that they're going to build 2 bridges on Sharps Creek Road. Now here's where we get to a really interesting and totally new part of his story. In Ray Nelson's book, Facts and Yarns of Bohemia Gold Mines, put out in 1969, he's got this little bitty story in there about a Colonel N.B. Knight and Bohemia Sharp meeting up in Salem and enjoying each other's company. Well, I'd read that for years, and it's one of those things you just look, it seems kind of irrelevant for years, and then finally I looked up this Colonel N.B. Knight. Well, he was a captain in the actual Civil War, but he was later, like when I was a boy, like many guys, given the honorary title of colonel. Like Colonel Sanders fried chicken, he's an honorary colonel, but given that designation by the state of Kentucky. Now, 2016, there's a movie about this Captain Knight, The Free State of Jones. And if you haven't seen this movie, it is extraordinary. They did not tell us about this when I was growing up in school in Louisiana. This man, this is a remarkable character because he and Sharp were in 2 battles together. Now, there were a lot of men at those battles, but they were in 2 very big battles in Mississippi together. So they may have encountered each other there, or at least had something to talk about when they met in Salem. Now, Knight deserted the Confederate Army after finding out that if you owned 20 slaves, you weren't drafted for the war. So he figured out pretty correctly and quickly that poor people and guys that didn't own any slaves were the ones who were being conscripted for the Confederacy. And he went back to his home county and he led a pro-Union rebellion against Confederate forces, fought them off numerous times. And at one time they sent 1,000 people after 1,000 soldiers that they needed someplace else to try to catch him and his handful of men. He set up a voting system there where everybody was eligible to vote. This is a remarkable man. He married his first wife left him, and then he married a black woman. He's buried with her, even though in Mississippi it was, and they only changed the law recently. It was illegal for a white person to be buried in a black cemetery or a black person to be buried in a white cemetery. And of course, you would never bury a husband and wife, biracial couple together, not down in Mississippi or Louisiana. So here they meet up in Salem. And I think this is the origin story for all that we have in our local histories about Bohemia Sharp, because it has all of these key elements of his story the very first time, I think, that they're ever told. This is a newspaper article from the Bohemian Nugget in 1899, and Bohemia Sharp and Captain Knight meet up in Salem. And it's the first time that anybody writes that James Sharp was in St. Louis. It's the first time that it says he avoided the Civil War. And it's the first time the story about him going to Peru is told. Now, whether any of that, but this becomes, I think, the basis for the stories of Ray Nelson, Gordon Grable with Golden Was the Past, and Ivan Hoyer, because they all, I'm pretty sure they all had, or at least Ray Nelson, the earliest writer, had this article here, the old timer, because it gives the story word for word. In fact, most of the article is a long quote of Bohemia Sharp's, and it's repeated in other publications. Here's a cool picture of what he looked like in 1900, and yeah, he looks like a tough gentleman right there. 1904, keep in mind he's a vegetarian. He gets super mad. It's in the newspaper because somebody lets their cattle get loose, and they tear up his garden, and it makes the newspaper. He's called a pioneer of the mines there. And he's one of the Sentinel readers. It says that if you don't, if it says Bohemians who do not get it. The Sentinel newspaper may borrow the leader from Mr. Sharp. And here is one of his visits up to Salem. Like I say, he went to Salem every legislative session and lobbied for gold miners. And when he was up there, like I say, he was a different fellow. And down here, he's not known to have ever had a girlfriend or there's no association. But maybe, just maybe, he was in love with somebody else. Because every year he proposed marriage to the governor's stenographer. And that would go for more than one governor, because the office people are there pretty much no matter who is governor. That's who really runs the state, the people who work in the offices. And he goes and proposes every year to the governor's stenographer, which gets him into the governor's office, and I can see how he can do a lot with this. Now here, by 1908, this is where the legends and facts get off from each other, because we all know that Bohemia Johnson is the one who found gold. What was it? When was the first finding? Was it 1863 or 6? 63, yes. Bohemia.
Oglesby found it in 58.
Right. Dr. Oglesby found gold up there in 1958 along with some other guys. But in this article from Eugene, Bohemia Sharp is credited with finding gold. Johnson is not mentioned. It's 45 years after Bohemia Johnson, so maybe there's enough time for him to, and Sharp's still around, so maybe there's enough time. And Sharp in this article says that the government wants his land to build a wildlife preserve, but he won't give it to him for that because it'll retard progress. It'll keep progress back. That's what he said to that. Now here's something that Deborah Montsev found, and actually had it in pieces, but didn't read the paragraphs there. I've used this picture here in the Asian celebration for many years. This picture of a man pulling a rickshaw in a Cottage Grove parade. And in this article, Centennial, it came out in the Sentinel in 1955, celebrating the 100th birthday. They identified this man carrying the rickshaw as Bohemia Sharp, who would be, getting up there by then. Now I did some research because you see, it's not a 4th of July parade because there's no flags and bunting and not that much decorating. 4th of July parades were really big at this time. So it's not a 4th of July parade. So I did some digging and found out that for a while they tried to get a sweet pea festival going and a sweet pea parade. And Bohemia Sharp, depending on what year you want to give his birth, is either 68 or 71. What's interesting here is that there's this woman, I believe, and I've had numerous people at the Asian celebration looking at it too. This woman looks Japanese. She looks like she's wearing a kimono, and that looks like an Akita dog, which is the national dog of Japan. And there's a blown up picture. Matthew was trying one time to get a good image of what Sharp's face might have been like, but unfortunately it's probably too dark. But you can see the woman with her kimono and the dog looking back at a horse, and that parasol, that's a Japanese style parasol. And also sweet peas were and still are a very popular plant and flower in Japan. And if he built the roads, which we know he did, he had to have relied on either Chinese labor or Japanese labor. And the Japanese were much more around here because we kicked the Chinese out in the 1870s. But and most railroads and roads built after the 1870s were built by Japanese, although quite often they're identified as Chinese, but that's what we always used to see, somebody that looks, like they're from Asia, and we immediately think they're Chinese. Now, this 1928 article brings in, calls in one of our quaintest characters. And, quaint is a good way of putting Bohemia Sharp. And this 1970 article by Gordon Grable, he says Sharp skipped the Civil War too. So the story of Sharp skipping out on the Civil War and going up through Panama and heading to Peru but coming to Oregon, that goes on and on. But there's a lot of good information in there in Gordon's story, but a lot of it needs to be double checked. And we have access to these wonderful digitized newspapers these days, and they really help us flesh out, dig deeper in real history. Now here is where things start going really downhill. It's 1913. Bohemia Sharp's really sick. Nobody will care for him. And they may have had good intentions, but this sets up in motion a series of events that winds up with him getting sent to Oregon State Hospital. And let's see, I think it's in this article, two of his friends he was working as a janitor at a hotel down here, and two of his friends, David Griggs and Hiram Griggs. And I know the museum, don't you have horseshoes or something from the Griggs at the Cottage Grove Museum? Okay, the West. So this was at the Telegraph. Telegraph. Yeah, that was that. So okay, not the same man. Whoops, scratch that. First error I've ever made in giving one of these talks. I'm serious, right. There were probably a few others here and there. But I just thought that was really, it shows that people who knew him liked him, that he had friends down here. And to me, that becomes important later on. Because if you're going to do a guy's work and then give him the money for the work you did, you really like the fella. So he's got legendary status. And in 1917, that previous article aroused a lot of sympathy for Bohemia Sharp. And back in those days, you find someone who couldn't care for themselves and you thought maybe they were poor, maybe they're having psych problems. There are two places for them, the Poor Farm and the Oregon State Mental Hospital. And here they send him to the Poor Farm because people feel sorry for him. And the article says he roared like a thunderstorm. Did not want to go to the Poor Farm, did not believe he should be poor because he never got paid for that road. And had he gotten paid for the road, maybe things would have been different. This is 1914. They say 78 here. And that would be 1836. They say he was born in Nashville. They say he went to Knox College and knew Grant and John Wilkes Booth. I can't find that definitively, but and I could go either way, that he made up a heck of a whopper, but I can put him in St. Louis, like he said, and at least John Wilkes Booth had an extended theatrical run, so maybe he saw Booth at something. And the story that he was from a wealthy family that invented the Sharp's rifle. Well, Alice got me to dig into this a little more, maybe you did. We find, or the first thing, the Sharp's rifle is plural. And that's because the man who invented it, his name is Sharps, plural, not Sharp, singular. But it makes a nice story to tell if you're Bohemia. So, and of course, a wealthy family. Also, in this article, the Sharp's rifle is called the gun of the Confederacy. And that is absolutely not true. The Sharp's rifle was used by Union soldiers. And when they only got it when they captured or found one on the battlefield. But the Sharp's rifle, so it's another thing that he told, and there's no record at all of him ever telling anyone in Oregon that he had been a Confederate soldier, that he had been a POW. No, he goes with the other story that he skipped the war altogether, and it may be that being a POW has been traumatic for every soldier who ever was a POW, but in the Civil War, it was doubly traumatic. The hatred on both sides, the cousin against cousin, brother against brother. So much of what we think we know of him isn't accurate. His family, his uncle did not invent I don't know what his uncle did, but he didn't invent the Sharp's rifle. So they sent him to the Poor Farm, and this is the one on Coburg Road at County Fair, close up to Armitage Park today. There was also another one out in Thurston, but they sent him to the Poor Farm, where he is likely ranting and raving that he's not poor. Lane County has not paid him for the road. Now, I worked in mental health for a lot of years, and I can tell you that when you get up at the psych hospital or Jerry mental health, you might have 25% of the people that you work with say that the government owes them money or took something from them or keeping them from something. That's probably a healthy 25% at least of people who think that the government owes them something. How many in this room, just raise your hand, think the government owes you something? Okay. Okay. And but the poor farms were our first attempts to deal with the homeless crisis back then and now. The Eugene Weekly wrote a really good article in 2020 about the Lane County poor farms. And if you just go to the Eugene Weekly site, search for poor farm, you'll find the article. And this is a copy of the original petition that was signed by county voters in 1910. That it was voters themselves who said, we need a poor farm in Lane County. But after raising hell at the poor farm, and they weren't letting them vote at the poor farm either. That infuriated Bohemia Sharp, not being able to vote. So they sent him up to the psychiatric hospital, and they call him again, quaint Bohemia Sharp, taken up to the Salem Hospital. This is about what it looked like in that year, in 1917, when he was up there. But he only lasted about a month and a half, 2 months, unfortunately. And here is, I just found this, Alice sent it to me and also had it, but this is a reprint of the Oregon Teachers Monthly from May 1916, and it's describing the beautiful, wonderful hospital for school children. And it starts off with this phrase, some of the school children who will read this article have never visited a hospital for the insane. Okay, any of y'all school kids visit Oregon State Hospital when they were growing up? We don't do that with Singing Creek Educational Center. No, we might someday, but not right now. But this is an article about just glowing how wonderful everything there was. And I read other articles like this in the 1980s and 90s, because I first met Becky Venice there at the ARC, the Association for Retarded Citizens of Oregon, and they were trying to downsize Fairview, the state facility for people with mental retardation and lots of other developmental disabilities. And then, so I worked for the ARC for a while, and then I started working in direct service, downsizing, and I've taken people out of every Oregon hospital there is. If one of y'all gets put in the mental hospital, call me and I can probably get you out. And these are, I'm not sure the exact year of this picture, but it's around our time. This is just the exercise yard where I'd let people out and just wander around there. There were about 1,000 residents when Bohemia Sharp was there, and they had almost that many staff. And it was a big operation. I didn't put it in, this is where they did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Ken Kesey worked at this is the hospital Ken Kesey worked at, that he got the background material for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Alice sent this to me. It is really cool. I broke it down. This is from 1894 and 1896, The Causes of Insanity. And I put just a few of them up here because they're funny to us today, but they weren't really funny to people at the time, because you could get sent to the mental hospital for anything. A husband could just have his wife committed just for nothing, or they really didn't do that. So this got me because I have epilepsy. My odds of being in the psych hospital would have been pretty high. Financial trouble, menopause, 6 women in there for menopause, 24 men for masturbation. Guys, be careful. Be careful. No women in there for masturbation. And 9 men in there for religion, and 6 women in there for, and I don't really know whether, what they were, how do you get in for religion? I've known a number of people I worked with that were overly religious. Maybe Opal Whiteley was overly religious. And then unknown, like there's 199 at this time, in this year, because it was done at the end of 1894, the beginning of 96, so it really just covers about a year. They still had 199 people, men, unknown why they're insane, and 76 women, unknown why they were insane. This was not a good time to be in. And this is when he dies, and it's reported in both the Oregonian and the Cottage Grove Sentinel. And they're really good articles, but they have the same different years and different ages. Now at Oregon State Hospital, they said he was 84 years old. So anyway, that's which would make him born, and there, they said he was 84. So here's the Sentinel article, and it repeats that he attended Knox College. Interestingly, it doesn't say he was a graduate there. It says he was just attended there. So it's possible he attended there and left. He was a smart man. He learned gold assaying because he wanted a job at it just by reading a book. He was Bohemia Sharp, a very intelligent man. And it says he knew and he worked with General McClellan, John Wilkes Booth, and once again, that's great that is an obituary. Last thing, Judge Fisk still owes him for that road, and that's a great thing in the obituary. And here in the Sunday Oregonian, they say that he came to Oregon in 1862. So, the bounce back and forth, did he come in 1862 bypassing the Civil War, or did he come in 1866 after he got out of the Union POW camp? So, and I'm not 100% down on either one, because there could have been 2. But it's likely it's the same guy, and the whole story. I hate to tell y'all so much, that our history books are wrong and that he didn't ever head out for Peru and he never got to Panama. Although later, it's funny, he did criticize where they were, the plans for where they were going to build the Panama Canal. He felt that there was a better spot in Nicaragua, and he wrote all kinds of letters to people trying to get them to change where the Panama Canal was going to go. And this story says no relatives or friends or present at his death. Well, that's true, but he died in an Oregon State mental hospital, and you don't have a lot of relatives or friends hanging out there with you, especially in these days, because I think I read the average time for being in the hospital was 10 years, and this is the period where they discouraged family members from visiting. Becky, you probably remember hearing about family members being discouraged from visiting people in the hospital, in the hospitals or treatment facilities. Actually, they just didn't want relatives to see what was happening. It didn't have anything to do, I don't think, with better treatment. So here's a death certificate I've got that says he was taken away, his body was taken to Portland, which is a new place that it's not mentioned in at all in any of the newspaper articles or texts that I saw. That nothing about Portland is mentioned. It says he had friends all over. So I just started, I looked up, I found he wasn't not in any Oregon or Washington cemetery. And so why did they take his body to Portland? Well, I worked in mental health for 20 years, downsized hospitals, and I've seen a lot of weird stuff. So it wasn't hard for me to figure that he was probably sent to the medical school for dissection. Bohemia Sharp was probably sent to the medical school for dissection. He had no family, and as you'll see in the next slide, when there's no family, there's no one to care a great deal, and that's really the only answer that fits. And I did this show, I think, a short version of it in 2019 at the community center, and still no other answer fits of where. And then Sunday night, I love Facebook. We say we love it, we hate it, but Sunday night I was looking in this group called Forgotten Oregon, and a woman had made a post saying that she was researching people who had died at the state hospital, and I looked on her name and said she was from Eugene, and so I invited her to the talk here and told her what it was about, and that it was just exactly what she was researching. And she had recently moved to Nevada, but she looked through her records and she sent me, this is so cool, because when I first made this talk, I had the death certificate says that they sent him to Portland, but it doesn't say where. And I figured it was the medical school. It was really the only logical answer, with no family, no friends, no grave. And he's not among the people at the hospital who were cremated. This nice woman named Jessica Cole, who's researching Oregon Hospital, sent me the photocopies of the actual death records. He's here about the fourth line from the bottom. And they were, great big old-fashioned ledgers where they wrote across on both sides. And on the other side, it says he was 84 years old and born in Nashville, and it says that it's sending his body to the medical college. It says right here in the Oregon State record, these are handwritten, the ledger, that they're sending him to the medical college. And she even had this handwritten note from the doctor who writes that, and it's just a note for him, probably a note, so he writes another note or somebody has a question later on. But he did contact the poorhouse to see if they wanted his body back. But they said that they didn't have any instructions about what to do with him. They did not contact anybody in Cottage Grove. They figured he didn't have any relatives. And frankly, when they sold a body to the medical school, they got money for it. So, I mean, and the medical school needs cadavers to, we're all happy that doctors got somebody to practice on before they started cutting us open and practicing on us. We all like that, but still the idea of him just being taken up there. The doctor's note down here says they contacted the poor farm and he phoned, get this, a Lane County judge. Even in death, Bohemia Sharp has problems with the judges from Lane County. It's a different one who didn't pay for the road, but you got to know he knew about he knew about that, and so I honestly think, folks, Bohemia Sharp deserves better than what he's got, and I would really like to see the historical groups pick up a let's make some kind of monument to Bohemia Sharp. We've got those muralists, the Wall Dogs, coming to town. Bohemia Sharp and his long johns would be a fantastic mural. Yes, backwards. But this man did a lot for Cottage Grove and getting the road up there to the. He improved a rough trail in the 1860s, and then late 1880s or 1890, he helped build a larger road, but that went sour because the details for this were a little foggy, but apparently Bohemia Sharp did not like the surveyors and the original engineers' layout for the road, and he changed it. You know, he's Bohemia Sharp. He knows the best thing to do, and he was probably right, but it didn't help him. But I think you know, he's got no grave. I mean, this important person in our community he should be remembered, and at least with some kind of gravesite or urn or some kind of marker. That would be really good. And gosh, we could even get South Lane Mental Health to help on it. And I want to thank Alice Christensen over there for double checking so much of the research in this and going back and forth over, you know, what year he was born. And this great picture of him in the long john. This is the only one we've got, but it's absolutely priceless. And for references, because I always put in a hyperlink to any reference that I use, and this is the Oregon Historic Newspapers link to all of the references to Bohemia Sharp in any Oregon newspaper. And you can go to those historic newspapers and just type in a subject or a date, and you can find just amazing things. And so I really strongly, if you haven't donated to, and you like these history pubs, please donate, well, first to Singing Creek Educational Center, but also to digitizing the newspapers. How far are we up to now? What year are we up to?
1973, but it won't be out till next year.
Okay, we've got 1973 digitized, so.
Not till next year.
Not till next year? Well, when you getting the ones with me in them? I mean, 70, 75, 76, 75? Okay, so more donations so I can get my name out of the paper and into the other thing. But yeah, and when you do these kind of searches, you search for Bohemia Sharp, James Sharp, JAS, they often abbreviated with. So, you know, it's fun. You got to really, got to really dig like you're digging for gold on these. And I want to give a special thanks. Here's a picture of my wife, Karen. This is in 1982 or 81 when we were still living together, but we hadn't gotten married yet. We were still, checking each other out. And she was the program director at KNND Radio. That's her as a disc jockey. And I thank all these people here that have helped me so much over the years. I could have filled 2 or 3 slides up with people who have helped me over the years, because everybody who's presented up here has stood on the shoulders of someone else. I know Joanne Skelton was a mentor to Deborah Monsif, and the two of them together created a fantastic genealogical society that does much more research than just the individual families. If you get a chance to be a mentor to somebody, do it, because it is incredibly valuable to carry on the history and the ideas. And if y'all have any questions, can't leave without saying something about Opal. I have this, the Fairyland Diaries. I did a deep dive in her book, The Fairyland Around Us, and found that 1/3 of it was composed of diary entries. So I pulled out all the diary entries, and they range from age about 8 to 18. And it's a really cool, it's on my website, storiesbysteve.com. But that one is a really, really cool look into the Fairyland Around Us, which was all written here in Cottage Grove. And we got no doubt that what's in the Fairyland Around Us is authentic diary entries of Opal at the time. Oh, and one more history thing coming up. This Saturday is the 179th anniversary of the Battle of Cerro Gordo in Mexico. And this is how we got the entire Southwest. The Battle of Cerro Gordo was one of the most important battles in our 1847 war with Mexico. But chances are, had we not fought and won this battle, we wouldn't be here in Oregon now, or maybe the country would. We wouldn't have the song that goes from sea to signing sea, because the country would stop someplace a little after Louisiana. But look at this. See, that's Cerro Gordo Mountain right there where the battle was fought. And if you think about the view from Baker Bay. I know most of y'all have been to Baker Bay, and look just across there. That view of that hill is so much, because I've read that our Cerro Gordo and the one in Mexico look an awful lot alike, and that's how this one got its name. Which, by the way, the Cerro Gordo in Mexico, the ancient Toltec city before the Aztecs, Teotihuacan, is lined up on a direct line to the mountain of Cerro Gordo in Mexico, and that's where they got the water from the city. It was a very sacred mountain to the pre-Aztec tribes. And back here, no, we don't often dig up dead bodies or hunt for lost bodies at Singing Creek Educational Center, but we do an awful lot of fun stuff of living history. Letters from the Oregon Trail, where kids pretend they're on the Oregon Trail and write letters to their families, and they learn about how that was done. And there are all kinds of activities that we have. What did pioneer kids do? What did they make toys out of? They had to have some kind of toy. What did they do?